What if everything was taken from you? Your name, your place, your comfort, your excuses, and only discipline remained. Not motivation, not hope, discipline. This is not a story about victory. It is a story about standing when nothing is left to stand on. 400 years ago, Miyamoto Musashi walked this path, not as a legend, but as a man stripped to the bone. No master, no clan, no home, only the daily decision to sharpen himself against emptiness. Musashi did not train to feel good. He trained to survive reality without illusions. Each morning, before the world demanded anything from him, he demanded something from himself. Not intensity, consistency. The body woke before the mind began. Cold water, bare ground, breath steady, movement without drama. This was not exercise, it was alignment. Discipline is not force, it is order. When everything external collapses, order becomes shelter. Musashi understood this early. Strength that depends on conditions is weakness. Calm that depends on silence is fragile. So he removed dependence. He ate simply, slept lightly, carried little. Not because he was poor, but because he refused to be owned by comfort. Every attachment was a chain. Every chain slowed the sword. Modern minds resist this truth. They chase optimization, hacks, shortcuts. Musashi chose subtraction. Eliminate what weakens you, not later, now. The still mind, Heijoshin, was not calmness as a feeling, but calmness as a default state. Chaos outside, silence inside. When fear rose, he did not fight it, he observed it. Fear is information, panic is misuse. Discipline teaches you the difference. The body learns before the mind believes. That is why discipline is physical first. Cold mornings, repetitive motion, training when the mood is absent. Mood is unreliable, ritual is law. Musashi did not seek confidence, he built inevitability. When you repeat the same action daily, identity bends to behavior. You stop asking, "Who am I?" You start answering it through action. The warrior's path, Senshi no Michi, is not violence, it is clarity. To move without hesitation, to act without internal negotiation. Most people lose energy arguing with themselves. Musashi removed the argument. Decision once, execution forever. Zanshin, abiding awareness, meant never being mentally elsewhere. No past fantasies, no future anxieties. Only now, only what is in front of the blade. Presence is power. The undisturbed mind, Fudoshin, was not emotional numbness, it was emotional stability under pressure. Insults did not move him, praise did not soften him. He did not identify with outcomes. Winning was not the goal, not losing yourself was. Strategy, Hyoho, was emptiness. No rigid plan, no attachment to technique. Flow adapts, ego breaks. Musashi won not because he sought victory, but because he avoided error. Focus on not collapsing, not on impressing. Sutami, abandoning the self, was the final discipline. The ego demands recognition, the warrior demands alignment. When ego dies, movement becomes clean. This is the secret they never market. Discipline is not self-improvement, it is self-removal. You remove weakness, you remove noise, you remove excuses until only function remains. And when life strips everything else away, nothing essential can be taken from you, because discipline is internal, portable, permanent. You do not rise to motivation, you fall to discipline. And if discipline is all you have, it is enough. Discipline does not announce itself. It grows quietly. In repetition, no one applauds. While others wait for the right moment, discipline moves without permission. Days pass, nothing dramatic changes, and yet everything is different. Because discipline rewires time. Effort compounds silently. Weakness erodes without ceremony. The world may never notice when you change, but the moment pressure arrives, the difference is undeniable. Where panic once lived, structure remains. Where doubt once whispered, habit answers. This is how warriors outlive chaos, not by resisting it, but by being organized inside it. Eventually, discipline becomes lighter, not because it is easy, but because it is no longer optional. You stop asking whether you should act. You act because it is who you are. And one day, without realizing when it happened, discipline stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like home. Nothing essential can be taken from you now, because what you built was internal, invisible, permanent. This is not the end of struggle. It is the end of fragility. And from this point forward, no matter what the world removes, you remain.
You wake before the world does, not because an alarm demands it, but because something inside you refuses to sleep any longer. A quiet pressure behind the ribs, a tension in the spine, a sense that if you stay still, you will decay. And in that half-light between night and morning, you realize this is where discipline is born. Not in motivation, not in inspiration, but in the silent decision to rise when no one is watching, when there is no applause waiting, when the only witness to your effort is the part of you that remembers every promise you broke and every moment you chose comfort over growth. And as your feet touch the cold floor, you feel resistance immediately, not from the world, but from your own nervous system trying to pull you back into warmth, into ease, into the illusion that tomorrow will be different without you changing today. Yet you stand anyway, shoulders slightly forward, breath shallow at first, mind already negotiating, already whispering that you deserve rest, that one missed day means nothing, that discipline can begin later. But you do not answer these voices with arguments. You answer them with action. You wash your face with cold water like a ritual, letting the shock remind you that you are alive, that you are here to endure, to sharpen, to forge something stronger than impulse. And as you look at your reflection, you do not see a hero or a warrior. You see someone unfinished, someone flawed, someone carrying the weight of inconsistency and regret. And yet you also see potential flickering beneath the surface, like embers under ash, waiting for friction, waiting for repetition, waiting for pressure to become fire. And in this moment, you understand something fundamental that most people never grasp, that transformation is not a dramatic event, but a daily agreement with discomfort, a contract signed every morning with your own will. And the world will never make this easy for you, because comfort is everywhere, distraction is engineered, weakness is normalized, excuses are socially acceptable. But discipline is lonely, discipline is quiet. Discipline does not announce a feeling of moving in the same direction as your values, instead of against them. And this alignment changes the way time feels. Minutes stretch, hours compress, and you begin to understand that procrastination was never about laziness, but about an unconscious refusal to sit with discomfort, a refusal you are no longer willing to indulge, because every avoided task was a small betrayal of self, and every completed one, no matter how insignificant it seems, is a vote cast for the identity you are building.
And as fatigue sets in later, not the dramatic kind, but the dull erosion of focus, you notice another familiar temptation arise, the desire to stop early, to reward yourself before the work is truly done. And here, discipline reveals its second face, restraint. The ability to delay gratification even when no one would blame you for giving in. And you remind yourself that discipline is not about punishment, it is about respect. Respect for your future self, for the time you have been given, for the potential you refuse to waste. And so you continue, adjusting your pace but not your standard, learning that consistency does not mean intensity every day. It means returning to the work without resentment, without drama, without needing to feel inspired. And as evening approaches and the world slows, you reflect not with pride, but with clarity, seeing the small moments where you almost drifted and the moments where you stayed present, realizing that mastery is simply the accumulation of these moments, repeated until they harden into character. And when night finally arrives, you do not seek escape, you seek closure, reviewing the day honestly, without cruelty and without excuses, understanding that discipline includes rest, but rest earned, rest that restores rather than numbs. And as you prepare to sleep, the mind quieter now, you recognize that nothing extraordinary happened today. No dramatic victory, no external validation, and yet something fundamental shifted beneath the surface because you kept the promise you made in the morning, and that alone changes the trajectory of a life. And as darkness settles and consciousness fades, the final thought that carries you into sleep is not hope or fear, but certainty, the calm knowledge that tomorrow you will rise again, not because it is easy, but because this is who you are becoming.
Morning returns without ceremony, and with it the quiet test of whether yesterday was an exception or the beginning of a pattern. And you feel the familiar hesitation surface again, softer now but still present, because habits do not dissolve overnight, they erode through repetition. And you acknowledge this without frustration, understanding that discipline is built the same way stone is shaped by water, through persistence rather than force. And as you stand at the threshold of action once more, you do not wait for confidence to appear, because confidence follows action, it does not precede it. So you move first, deliberately, almost mechanically, trusting the process more than your mood. And as the hours progress, you notice something subtle but profound. The inner resistance that once screamed now murmurs, its authority diminished by yesterday's proof. And this is when the real danger appears, complacency, the belief that the battle is already won. But you refuse it, remembering that discipline is not a destination, but a practice, something you must enter daily with humility. Because the moment you assume control is permanent is the moment it slips away. And so you approach each task as if it matters, not because of its outcome, but because of what it demands from you. Presence, patience, follow-through. And when unexpected obstacles arise, interruptions, delays, minor failures, you do not interpret them as signs to quit, but as part of the forge itself, the heat that reveals weak points in your resolve. And instead of reacting emotionally, you respond strategically, adjusting without abandoning the path, learning that flexibility and discipline are not opposites, they are partners. And as the day challenges you in new ways, you feel a growing separation between who you were and who you are becoming. Not dramatic, not visible to others, but unmistakable to you. Because the old version would have escaped at the first sign of discomfort, while this version stays, works, finishes, and accepts imperfection without surrender. And by the time evening returns again, you realize that discipline is no longer something you are forcing onto yourself. It is something you are expressing, a natural extension of an identity taking shape. And in that realization, there is no celebration, only calm, because true transformation is quiet,
almost invisible but relentless. And as you prepare to rest once more, you understand that nothing essential can be taken from you now. Not motivation, not circumstances, not fear, because what guides you no longer depends on them. And you close your eyes, knowing that the forge is lit, the steel is hardening, and tomorrow, without hesitation, you will step back into the fire.
Sleep does not erase the work that has been done. It seals it. And when you wake again, there is a steadiness in your body that did not exist before. A grounded awareness that the day ahead will ask something from you, and that you are prepared to answer. Not with excitement, not with force, but with consistency. And you rise knowing that discipline is no longer a reaction to guilt or fear. It is a decision renewed each morning. And as you move through the early hours, you notice how silence itself becomes an ally, because there is less negotiation now, fewer internal debates. The mind understands its role and follows. And when discomfort appears, as it always does, you do not dramatize it. You do not label it as suffering. You recognize it as effort, neutral and temporary. And this reframing strips it of its power, allowing you to remain present inside the work rather than watching yourself struggle against it. And the tasks that once felt heavy now feel precise, almost surgical, because you are no longer trying to prove anything. You are simply executing what must be done. And in that execution, you begin to feel the deeper shift, the erosion of the identity that needed motivation, applause, or urgency to function, replaced by one that operates regardless of external signals. And this is when the forge truly reveals its purpose, not to make you invulnerable, but to make you reliable, someone who can be counted on by their future self. And when doubt whispers again, as it inevitably will, you do not argue with it. You do not try to silence it. You let it exist without obedience, understanding that discipline does not require the absence of doubt, only the refusal to let it decide. And as the day closes once more, you recognize that transformation is not marked by a single moment of triumph, but by the quiet accumulation of days like this, ordinary on the surface, decisive beneath. And you end the day without questioning whether you will continue tomorrow, because the question itself no longer matters. The path has been chosen, the movement has begun, and step by step, without spectacle, you are becoming someone who does not wait to be ready, someone who moves, even when the mind hesitates, even when the world remains unchanged. And in that steady motion, you understand the final truth of the forge. Discipline is not something you build to escape who you were. It is what allows you to finally stand as who you are.
And from that understanding, something even more subtle begins to take shape. A widening of awareness that extends beyond the tasks themselves and into the way you inhabit each moment. Because discipline, once stabilized, stops being something you consciously apply and starts becoming the atmosphere you live inside, influencing how you speak, how you listen, how you respond when plans fracture or expectations collapse. And you notice that situations which once provoked resistance now register as neutral terrain, neither hostile nor friendly, simply conditions to be navigated. And this neutrality is power, because it removes the emotional charge that used to drain you before the real work even began. And as days stack quietly upon one another, you start to sense time differently, not as an enemy rushing past or a judge reminding you of what you have not done, but as a material you can shape through repeated action. And this shift alone dismantles procrastination at its root, because there is no longer a fantasy future where everything magically aligns, only the present moment where movement is possible, and you act there again and again without ceremony. And when fatigue enters, as it must, you do not romanticize rest, nor weaponize it as an excuse. You use it deliberately, as a craftsman sets down his tools to preserve their edge, knowing exactly when to stop and exactly when to return. And this precision bleeds into your thinking, reducing excess, sharpening intention, until even your inner dialogue becomes quieter, more economical, stripped of self-criticism and self-praise alike, because both are distractions from the work itself. And in this quiet, you encounter resistance in its purest form, not fear screaming for attention, but a low, persistent heaviness that asks whether this path is worth continuing without immediate reward. And here, in this space, discipline reveals its deepest function, which is not to push you forward aggressively, but to hold you steady long enough for meaning to catch up with action. And you remain, breathing, moving, adjusting, understanding that mastery is not the elimination of struggle, but the refinement of your relationship to it. And gradually, you realize that the person you used to be, the one who needed urgency, pressure, or crisis to act, has not been defeated or erased, but integrated, no longer running the system, no longer trusted with the steering wheel. And this integration brings a calm confidence that does not announce itself, a confidence rooted not in outcomes, but in process, because you know now that regardless of success or failure, you will return to the forge tomorrow, and the next day, and the one after that, shaping yourself through repetition rather than emotion, through presence rather than intensity, until action becomes so natural that hesitation feels foreign. And at that point, without realizing when it happened, you cross an invisible threshold where discipline is no longer something you practice, but something you embody. And from there, every step forward carries weight, not because it is dramatic, but because it is inevitable.
And so this is where the path closes, not with noise or triumph, but with a steady exhale, because the end of this journey is not a finish line you cross once, but a state you return to every day. And you understand now that nothing external needs to change for you to move forward. No permission to be granted, no perfect conditions to arrive, because the forge was never a place outside you. It was the quiet decision to show up when no one is watching, to act when motivation is absent, to continue when the mind offers comfort as a substitute for progress. And in this understanding, there is no anger toward your past self, only clarity. Because every delay, every avoidance, every moment of doubt led you here, to a point where excuses no longer sound convincing and fear no longer feels authoritative. And you stand differently now, not taller, not louder, but grounded, aware of your weight, your breath, your direction, knowing that discipline did not make you rigid, it made you free. Free from the endless negotiation with yourself, free from the illusion that tomorrow will save you from today. And as you step forward from this moment, you do so without needing inspiration, because you have something stronger, a system, a rhythm, a way of being that does not collapse under pressure or disappear in comfort. And this is the final truth of the Zen Forge, that transformation is not a single act of courage, but a long sequence of quiet, ordinary decisions made consistently over time. And if you carry anything with you from this story, let it be this, that nothing essential can be taken from you anymore. Not time, not focus, not resolve, because you have learned how to return to yourself again and again. And from here on, whatever comes, you will meet it the same way, present, disciplined, unshaken, walking forward without retreat, knowing that the fire still burns and you are no longer afraid of it.